Among the countless items scattered across the vast worlds of Bethesda's video games, few are as iconic, abundant, and frequently stolen as the Sweetroll, a famous polygonal baked treat topped with white icing known to most fans around the world for its appearance right here in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, but an item that can also be found here, and even here in the post-apocalyptic setting of the Fallout franchise. Because somehow, someway, over the passing decades, this unassuming little carbohydrate has managed to transcend the medium of video games entirely. And with roots dating back to the earliest days of Bethesda's very existence, the Sweetroll has become one of the longest running jokes in all of video game history. But more than that, I mean, this thing is on t-shirts, keychains, aprons, candles, plushies, whatever the hell this little thing is. The Sweetroll is an institution, and one just has to wonder, why? How did this video game item get such a devout cultural following? What is the origin of the whole gag? Does the Sweetroll have any justifiable place in the lore and world of these games? And if I personally try my hand at making one in real life, is it going to taste as sweet as it looks right here? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Itempedia, a video series where we take long looks at various iconic or beloved digital objects in the world of video games and just try to figure out what makes each of them truly special. I am Ghost, your host as always, and this, my friends, is the legend of the Sweetroll. The year is 1994, and a brand new fantasy-themed role-playing adventure has just released on PC called The Elder Scrolls Chapter 1 Arena. So you fork over the cash, you fan out those beautiful floppy disks, boot her up, and are swept away to a strange new world of political intrigue, destiny, and tons of lore-accurate racism. But when creating your hero for this quest, you are presented with a very simple choice. Select a starting class from a pre-constructed list, or generate a starting class through a series of 10 specific screening questions. Questions that offer up morally interesting situations for you to ponder, with 3 possible responses to help determine who exactly your champion will be. And out of the 40 possible scenarios the player may be presented with, one of them reads something like this.
While in town, the baker gives you a Sweetroll. Delighted, you take it into an alley to enjoy, only to be intercepted by a gang of 3 other kids your age. The leader demands the Sweetroll, or else he and his friends will beat you and take it. Do you A. Drop the Sweetroll and step on it, then get ready for the fight? B. Give him the Sweetroll now without argument, knowing that later this afternoon you will have all your friends with you and can come and take whatever he owes you? Or C. Act like you're going to give him the Sweetroll, but at the last minute throw it in the air, hoping that they'll pay attention to it long enough for you to get a shot in on the leader.
Believe it or not, this imaginary situation is where the entire legend of the Sweetroll begins. A straightforward prompt to simply determine if the player prefers the path of the warrior, the mage, or the thief. The Sweetroll itself, an abstraction, an amorphous dessert thing that merely acts as the catalyst for this hypothetical and nothing more. A tool, really, of class concoction that I am certain at the time was even less than an afterthought for whichever Bethesda employee wrote this. Now, sweet rolls, of course, exist here in the real world as a broad term for any baked, yeast-leavened, single-serving, sweet treat, often topped with spices, nuts, fruits, or, of course, icing. But within the actual game world of Arena, no such item exists. In fact, there are 0 consumable foods, period, in this game, so really this is all there is. Now honestly, when you look at stupid-ass long-running jokes or similar things like that on the internet truly standing the test of time, this is almost always how they started, with innocence, with absolutely 0 intentions behind their creation, but over time naturally building and building until it's something more. Now, to be clear, I was a full-on baby in 1994. I wasn't there to hop on the ancient hieroglyphic forums of old and see if people were like, haha, stolen Sweetrolls, but something tells me they weren't. No. Not yet. But just a few years later in the Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall, this exact Sweetroll prompt was used word for word in the very same process of generating a player class. Now, admittedly, this doesn't mean much, as a majority of these scenarios were just copy and pasted over from the original, but still, the Sweetroll did persist, and just like in Arena, there was no physical version of the item found in-game. And pretty much the same can be said with 2002's Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. The prompt was reused for a third straight time. However, it is definitely notable here, as the list of possible questions the player might be asked was edited big time from that initial 40 down to 10 that were always the same, and the Sweetroll question made the cut. And yet still, no actual in-game Sweetroll can be found. Now, Morrowind was the Elder Scrolls title where edible food made its debut, with things like ash yams and bread offering replenishing effects to the player. It just seems that dessert was left off the menu. So no, my friends, it wasn't until the year of our Lord 2006, with the release of my personal favorite Elder Scrolls game ever, the greatest Elder Scrolls game ever, Oblivion, that this formless treat was at last granted life. No longer a cog in a vague text-based conceptual query, but an actual video game item. This is the first ever Sweetroll. Now, interestingly, the entire class-building question system was totally scrapped here with Oblivion. I've always kind of imagined one of the developers like going back, deleting all these old prompts and kind of going, ah man, there goes the old Sweetroll question. And then thought to themselves, yo, wait a second, why don't we just... But all throughout the land of Cyrodiil, you find these simple-looking, uniced, almost muffin-like buns populating plates, bowls, and store shelves. Not as a one-off goofy wink to the fans who might recall its super niche origin, but actually a very commonplace foundational piece of clutter. And now that I'm really studying this thing up close and personal, it looks far more like a Hawaiian sweet bun or even like a classic dinner roll than it does the gaudy, diabetic things they grew to be in Skyrim. In the town of Skingrad, there's an entire bakery operated by a chipper Altmer named Salmo, who is known far and wide for his specific mastery of the Sweetroll. And locals in Skingrad will even share an extremely awkward anecdote meant to nod at the origins of this thing.
I'll buy Sweetrolls from Salmo the baker any day. Once I was carrying a Sweetroll when 3 thugs attacked me, so I took the Sweetroll.
In general, Oblivion expanded big time on the entire mechanic of having edible in-game food. But very interestingly, instead of just like eat this and gain some HP like in Skyrim, food in Oblivion behaves very similarly to alchemical ingredients. Every single food in the game holds 4 inherent alchemical properties that you can then discover and utilize in the brewing of various potions as well as poisons. So the Sweetroll's traits in Oblivion are as follows: restore fatigue, resist disease, fortify health, and my favorite of all, damage personality.
What?
Apparently eating these things just makes you like the worst guy around. So if you wanted to make a little Sweetroll potion, just throw them in a vial with some smoked ballywag leg, a Daedra heart, and then some lettuce. You got a nice disgusting brew that's going to restore health, fatigue, and make you moderately less palatable in social situations. Fantastic. Ooh, and I almost forgot. In the Shivering Isles DLC, there is this insane Bosmer named Fimian, and well, just listen.
Yes? I have idea for you. But first Sweetroll for Fimian. Sweetroll for Fimian. Idea for you. Sweetroll. If he still no go, make Ungo crispy with fire spell. Then glaze. Then eat him like a giant Sweetroll. Sweetroll.
So I think you can see how this debut for the Sweetroll was kind of inherently comical. Probably just because the people writing these games felt it was a harmless, fun, and original in-universe item to finally play around with a little bit, and it might produce a tiny bit of amusement for those small few who remember the original games. Also, the Oblivion remake is brand spanking new as of the making of this video. I personally can't stop playing it, someone please help me. So check out the new HD version. Oh my god, it's beautiful. Got that coil, the drizzled icing, which is huge. Looks like they got some cinnamon or something stuffed in there. Massive upgrade, but still loyal to the original. Very good stuff. Now you might think that the second ever Sweetroll would be found in 2011's Skyrim, but it was actually Fallout 3, released just 2 years after Oblivion in 2008, that gave us the next step in evolution. But instead of a thing found all over the game world like in Oblivion, this Sweetroll is seen very early on in the introductory sequence as an Easter egg. So Fallout 3 has you playing as a resident of Vault 101, starting out as a little baby. And within the first minutes of the game, you are celebrating your character's 10th birthday party, which is a pretty big deal in the Vault because it's the day you get your Pip-Boy and you begin your first work assignment. But unfortunately, things go awry at your party when the vault robot absolutely beefs it while trying to cut your cake and completely kills the mood. Thankfully, this really nice old lady who lives in the vault with you, Miss Palmer, hands you a treat to make you feel better in wake of this tragedy, and that treat is a nice home-baked Sweetroll. But of course, it doesn't take long for a very familiar situation to arise.
I'm hungry, and that stupid robot destroyed the cake. Give me that Sweetroll you got from old lady Palmer.
God, I wish I could beat this kid up, man, but there you go. No class generation, no game mechanics, no consequence to the way you respond to your bully here. Just the perpetuation of the Sweetroll continuity. If you take a look at the item in your Pip-Boy inventory, it's got a nice little icon, and if you eat it, it will heal you a few points. But looking closely at the actual model, it is noticeably different from its Oblivion cousin, as it finally has that big old gob of white icing. Now maybe this is a tinfoil hat thing for me personally, but I have always thought that that white top combined with the overall shape of this Sweetroll kind of looks like something else thematically appropriate here for Fallout. Holding it up to the horizon, doesn't that look like a mushroom cloud? I absolutely think so. But this Sweetroll right here is a huge pivotal moment in this legend, as it's the signal of Bethesda's true intentions with this item. From this moment on, it was no longer an Elder Scrolls thing, but a Bethesda thing, a breaking of the fourth wall in a way that perfectly set the Sweetroll up for its career-defining performance, which is of course right here in Skyrim. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Sweetroll with a capital S. Evolution perfected. I mean, look at that rounded shape, the dimple in the middle, that white icing. This game had plenty of problems at launch, I think we all know that, but this little fella, he was never one of them. Though you gotta keep in mind, I am absolutely using a 4K Sweetroll texture mod, which I'll link down below. The vanilla one looks quite a bit more. And damn, look at that thing. I forget sometimes how simply massive these things are in-game. Much less of a snack, much more of like a proper cake. But the Sweetroll is indeed all over this game. In shops, inns, homes, Jarl's palaces, pretty much anywhere you can imagine cuisine being plated. Way more prevalent than in Oblivion, and now devoid of its alchemical properties. Just empty carbs that give the player 5 HP when eaten and nothing else. But the Sweetroll also seems to be a bit of a regional talking point here in Skyrim, as tons of NPCs have tons of different things to say about them. Everyone from little children running around in town to Cicero, the crazy jester I made a video on last month. But most famously of all, the hold guards all over Skyrim will occasionally look your way and completely unprompted hit you with one of the most iconic lines in video game history.
Let me guess. Someone stole your Sweetroll.
Like, dog, look at me. Who do you think you're talking to right now? But this is the key to our entire investigation in this video. This is the voice line that single-handedly launched the Sweetroll into the stratosphere, and it's the thing you will most often see referenced when people are talking about this item. Now, let's break this down and think about it a little bit. How many people do you think actually played the Elder Scrolls Arena compared to Skyrim? Let's be super generous and say like 4 or 5%. And of that 5%, how many of those people do you think used the question system to build a class back in the day, got lucky enough to see the Sweetroll scenario specifically, and then remembered it well enough to notice a pattern of it showing up in the following games? I would guess not too many. The humorous concept of a stolen Sweetroll may have very well been a long-running joke on the developer end of things, but it was a super-duper deep cut on the fan side going into Skyrim. I mean, I bet a majority of fans were introduced to the idea with Fallout 3 and took this quote as a reference to Butch. But then also you have a massive amount of people, probably the majority, who discovered Bethesda for the first time with Skyrim. So my point here is, this simple, funny, mocking quote from the guards is humorous and memorable enough, even without any of the context. May the Lord strike me down for using this word, but it's memeable. It's palatable for any type of fan, casual or hardcore. You don't need to be in the know to find it entertaining every time you hear it, but once you learn that the Sweetroll is this kind of long-running thing, it has this history outside of the game surrounding it, listen, it makes people feel good to be on the inside of a joke or a gag. And from there, it's just human nature to then want to perpetuate that joke, and it begins to spread and spread and spread. And of course, this is not limited to the Sweetroll bit. There are loads of Skyrim guard lines that we all know by heart. I used to be an adventurer like you is probably the biggest. No lollygagging, you've committed crimes against Skyrim and her people, must have been the wind. And when you think about these lines coming from guards specifically, this whole thing makes even more sense. Guards are everywhere you go, patrolling every town, city, the roads in between. Sometimes the screen is still black because you're loading in and they're already yapping at you about the Dawn Guard being back or whatever. You are sure to hear it from these fellas hundreds upon hundreds of times during one single playthrough. And we must never forget that the guards in Oblivion crawled so that the Skyrim ones could walk. Those fools were a whole other beast. But things like the Sweetroll, they just grow in a very natural way when it comes to internet-based fandoms, especially in the early 2010s when cave painting-esque memes were being shared via email chain. Forums and fan sites were still alive and well. I mean, speaking of which, going back to the Morrowind days, the official Bethesda forums were always a place where funny, low-effort, strange stuff emerged like the fishy stick. So with Skyrim's insane popularity at that specific time, the Sweetroll was just one of those things that came out on top. Now, a few other notables here in-game. Glover Mallory, a master thief living in Solstheim, has a secret basement stash of some of his loot you get to check out, and amongst these super valuable stolen items, a handful of Sweetrolls. You know, maybe he was that kid from the prompt, man. Then you got the Wabbajack, the famous staff of Sheogorath Daedric, Prince of Madness, which has a super small chance to turn your enemy into a Sweetroll, and then you can eat it, which is kind of sick. If you fancy yourself a baker and not a thief, you can pull up to an oven and make some yourself, and if you get into modding, there is some truly unholy fan-made stuff that is very fun to discover. So moving forward from Skyrim, Sweetrolls became inevitable, a simple expectation of Bethesda fans. Fallout 4 features an absolutely horrific, disgusting Sweetroll that looks more like an old sirloin steak from 50,000 years ago. There's also a birthday cake variant. Fallout 76's Sweetroll somehow looks even more like a flattened turd with some mysterious milky substance smeared on top, which I guess works for the setting. The Elder Scrolls Blades has got some, the Elder Scrolls Legends, the card game, had a Sweetroll mechanic also connected to the Wabbajack, and the Elder Scrolls Online has got loads of Sweetroll content, with them being a craftable food. The Thieves Guild DLC made tons of references to there being a desirable thing for stealing, and there is even a so-called Sweetroll killer in the Dark Brotherhood DLC that sends his soon-to-be victims a Sweetroll with a letter baked inside. And I don't want to forget that this thing has now also been to space, showing up in Starfield in this little takeout container. The Sweetroll has just continued to grow year after year into one of the poster boys of that at times cringy category of like, if you know, tip of the fedora gamer humor. The cake is a lie, press F to pay respects, all your base are belong to us, that sort of thing. And honestly, that makes it even funnier to me personally. Now, if you are a subscriber to this channel, you very likely enjoy yourself some video game lore, and maybe you have been wondering, is there any significance to this treat in each universe it has appeared? And the answer is honestly, well, no, not really. I mean, I could speculate, of course, about its placement in various halls and shops and certain regions that we have been able to observe, how the treat may vary province to province, but I believe that would be a waste of both of our time. The lore of the Sweetroll is what we just covered. It's been written by us, the fans, along with Bethesda, and I can't wait to see how it continues in the Elder Scrolls 6. Maybe we can get some interesting in-game book or something on the topic. Now, speaking of books, in 2019, Bethesda published something that I think is just magnificent, the first ever official Elder Scrolls cookbook, which is just a super fun thing for any Elder Scrolls fan, and of course, the Sweetroll is featured prominently in the dessert section. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's whip up one of these puppies right now and just see how it tastes. Welcome to my cooking show, everybody. I'll put a link down below to the recipe if you guys want to try this out for yourself. I got these little molds on Amazon for like $10 and then ran to the local shop to get all the ingredients I needed, and we're well on our way. Shout out to my girlfriend for helping me out with this. She's just kind of good at stuff. And shout out to my adorable dog Maze, who was extremely tired after I gave her a piece of hot dog. Also, look at this Snoopy mug. It is beyond tough. Damn, I feel like Casey Neistat right now. Anyway, so making the official Sweetroll is a pretty easy process. I just followed the instructions, slapped the ingredients for the batter together, made sure that milk was a little bit warm, and mixed it up well. Though I will say this batter on the mix was mad sticky, very similar to just straight up bread dough, so it was kind of hard to get into the mold, but we managed. Pushed out any air pockets, and then, farewell. Good luck on your little journey to Oblivion, fella. While that was cooking, we made the cream cheese icing, which was super easy, and bada bing, here he comes out of the oven. Honestly, pretty happy with that. I thought some of those ridges might crack in the mold, but no, packed in one beautiful piece. Probably should have waited a couple more minutes before icing them up here because you wanted to cool down, but hey, it's all good, and there you have it. A Ghostcharm and Ghost Girl crafted Sweetroll. Now, I will say, this thing ended up being extremely dense, pretty much just a big solid piece of bread with liquid sugar on top, and not the most pleasant thing to eat out there, but it does feel very Elder Scrolls, very medieval fantasy, very authentic. But occasionally I would put a piece down and it would just vanish. Iconic video game items can come in so many different shapes and sizes. Weapons, vehicles, power-ups, armor. But the Sweetroll? The Sweetroll is something entirely unique. Because I mean, what the hell have we really been talking about for the last 20 minutes? This item doesn't do anything aside from just sitting there staring at you. It's one of thousands of clutter objects just meant to add some flavor to the game world. But I do hope you can now see how it is just a little bit more than that. It's all about us, the fans, working in tandem with Bethesda for over 30 years now in an unspoken sugary agreement. This is an item you can always count on being present and always count on being stolen. For that, my friends, is the legend of the Sweetroll.